college football just changed one of the oldest roster-building tools in the sport. For decades, coaches could bring in a young player, let him practice, let him grow, and preserve a season of competition through the redshirt system. That system is now being replaced. The NCAA has adopted a new age-based eligibility model built around one continuous 5-year period. The organization says the change will make eligibility simpler, more transparent, and easier for athletes, families, coaches, and schools to understand. But the most important part of the rule is not that some athletes may now compete for 5 seasons. It is that the clock does not stop. It does not stop because a player sits out. It does not stop because he transfers. It does not stop because he leaves the team for a season. And under the new model, the traditional athletics redshirt is no longer something a program can use to protect future playing time. That means the NCAA has made eligibility easier to calculate, while potentially making development time more expensive. And that is the real story. The new rule is already being described as 5 for 5. That phrase makes it sound as though every college athlete has simply been handed 5 guaranteed seasons. The NCAA itself says that description is not accurate. The model allows up to 5 years of eligibility for athletes who begin college at the right time and remain inside the continuous window. It does not guarantee 5 complete seasons to every athlete, especially anyone who delays enrollment. The Division I Cabinet adopted the model on June 23, 2026. Athletes who first enroll full-time in fall 2027 or later will use only the new system. Current athletes with eligibility remaining, along with students first enrolling during the 2026 to 2027 academic year, receive transition treatment. Their schools must compare the previous system with the new system and use whichever outcome is more favorable for that individual. Athletes who use their final season under the previous rules during the 2025 to 2026 academic year do not automatically receive another season. So this is not a universal bonus year. It is a replacement for the way eligibility is measured. The new period begins with the earlier of 2 events. The first is initial full-time college enrollment. That includes enrollment at a 4-year university, a junior college, or an international institution. The second is an age-based trigger. When an athlete turns 19 before September 1st, the clock begins at the start of the regular academic year, immediately following that birthday, even if the athlete has not enrolled yet. When an athlete turns 19 on or after September 1st, the period begins with the next academic year after that, unless full-time college enrollment starts it earlier. That detail can change an athlete's entire path. Consider 2 prospects who graduate from high school at the same time. One turns 19 in August. The other turns 19 in September. The August birthday can trigger the clock 1 academic year sooner, and once the clock begins, it runs continuously for 5 years. A player can be inside that 5-year period and still be academically ineligible, suspended, injured, or unable to compete for another reason. The new clock does not replace the rest of the eligibility rulebook. It only replaces the old way of counting athletic seasons and preserving them. That is why the simple phrase 5 for 5 hides the central trade-off. The new system can give an athlete a clearer opportunity to compete for 5 seasons, but only if the athlete reaches college on time and can use the window effectively. The rule is simpler. Time is not more forgiving. To understand what changed, compare the old model with the new one. Under the previous system, an athlete generally had 5 calendar years to use 4 seasons of competition. Programs also tracked whether participation counted as a season. Football had a redshirt rule. Medical hardship waivers could preserve a season in qualifying cases. Clock extension waivers could provide additional time. Compliance staffs tracked games, injuries, enrollment, transfers, exceptions, and waiver evidence. The new model removes much of that machinery. There are no seasons of competition to count. There is no athletics redshirt to track. Sport-specific enrollment timelines are removed. The delayed enrollment system is removed. Medical hardship waivers, extension waivers, season of competition waivers, athletics activity waivers, and delayed enrollment waivers are eliminated under the age-based model. Instead, there is one 5-year period and a small number of written exceptions. That is a major administrative simplification. It is also a major strategic change. Imagine a true freshman offensive lineman who arrives at 18 and needs a season to add strength. Under the old system, the staff could limit his participation, preserve a season, and still plan for 4 future playing years. Under the new system, the first year passes whether he plays or not. He may still have 4 years left on the clock, but the program preserved nothing by keeping him off the field. Now imagine a quarterback who spends 2 years behind an established starter, transfers, and needs another season to learn a new offense. The clock continues during every stage. Sitting behind the starter does not pause it. Entering the portal does not pause it. Changing schools does not pause it. A season without meaningful snaps still uses time. Now consider a junior college player. Many fans think the Division I clock begins when a player reaches a major program. Under the new system, full-time junior college enrollment already starts it. A player who spends 2 years developing there may arrive at a football bowl subdivision program with a significant portion of the window gone. Then there is the athlete who delays college. A prospect may take a gap year to train, improve grades, recover from an injury, help family, or wait for a better opportunity. The age trigger can start the period even without enrollment. That athlete could reach college with less than 5 years remaining. The rule rewards a clean, immediate path. It is less accommodating when life becomes complicated. The transition period adds another layer. A current athlete with remaining eligibility may receive a better outcome under the old system. Another may benefit more from the new age-based model. Schools must compare the two and apply the result that gives each athlete more time. For a brief period, players on the same roster can be governed by different eligibility structures. There is also a critical deadline. Schools have until July 31st, 2026 to submit remaining season of competition or clock extension waiver requests based on circumstances that occurred during or before the previous academic year. After that deadline, those previous waiver categories close. The NCAA Eligibility Center expects to place age-based information into athlete accounts in early August. That makes this more than a future rule. The transition is happening now. There are still limited exceptions. Pregnancy can pause the period for the documented time when the athlete cannot compete. Active duty military service, official religious missions, and similar service commitments can be excluded when the athlete does not participate in organized competition during that period. But these are narrow exceptions written into the rule. They are not the broad case-by-case flexibility of the old waiver system. The new structure creates certainty by reducing discretion. But certainty can cut in both directions. It can prevent an athlete from losing a season because of a technical participation count. It can also deny relief when an injury or development path does not fit a written exception. The old system asked whether a season had been used. The new system asks how much time remains. That change reaches far beyond the compliance office. It changes the value of patience. Modern college football programs already build rosters under enormous pressure. Coaches manage the transfer portal, direct athlete payments, recruiting classes, immediate expectations, and roster limits created through the house settlement structure. For programs that opted into those rules, the Football Bowl subdivision roster limit is 105 players. Every place matters. Every year spent waiting for a player to become ready carries a cost. The redshirt gave coaches a way to separate development time from competition time. A freshman could learn the offense, reshape his body, improve technique, and preserve 4 seasons. That did not guarantee he would stay or become a starter, but it gave the program a reason to be patient. Under a continuous clock, that patience becomes harder to justify. If an offensive lineman needs 2 years before he can protect the quarterback, the program has used 2/5 of his window. If a quarterback is buried behind 2 older players, the years still move. If a young defensive player needs time to learn coverage responsibilities, the clock does not care. The program may still develop that player. The question is whether it will choose him over someone who can contribute immediately. That is where the transfer portal becomes even more important. An older portal player with proven college film is less of a projection. The staff knows whether he can handle the speed, whether his body is ready, and how he performs against college competition. A high school prospect may have more long-term upside, but he carries more development risk. When roster space is limited and the clock never pauses, immediate readiness can become more valuable than theoretical potential. That does not mean high school recruiting disappears. The best programs still need young talent and players who can grow inside the culture. But the type of player receiving patience may change. Elite prospects who can help early remain valuable. Late bloomers, undersized linemen, raw quarterbacks, and players changing positions face a harder calculation. The program is no longer deciding whether to use a redshirt. It is deciding whether the remaining years justify the investment. Junior college recruiting could face a similar tension. Junior colleges provide a second path for athletes who need academic improvement, physical development, or more film. But full-time junior college enrollment starts the clock. A player can become more prepared while becoming less flexible. By the time he reaches a major program, he may be ready to contribute, but the receiving school may have fewer seasons to work with. Delayed enrollment becomes risky for the same reason. Families cannot assume that waiting outside college preserves the complete window. Age can start the clock. That makes enrollment timing a football, academic, and eligibility decision at once. Injuries create the hardest version of the trade-off. A player can do everything correctly, enroll on time, earn a role, and lose a season to a serious injury. Under the old model, a qualifying medical hardship could protect that season. Under the new model, the traditional medical hardship waiver is gone. The injury does not automatically return the time. That could push athletes to compete earlier when healthy. It could also push programs to make faster decisions about injured players when roster space is tight. Those consequences are not guaranteed. Coaches may decide that 5 possible seasons create more opportunity to develop players. A program may use freshmen more freely because there is no reason to protect a redshirt. Young players can receive real game experience without coaches counting appearances. Sam Edwards, a Michigan State football player who served on the Division I board, argued that coaches can now use the entire roster without saving a group for redshirts. That is a real benefit. The old rule sometimes encouraged teams to keep healthy, capable players on the sideline to preserve a future season. The new rule removes that incentive. A freshman can help on special teams or enter during an injury crisis without threatening a redshirt count. So the rule may reduce patience with players who are not ready. It may also create more opportunity for players who are ready sooner than expected. Both can be true. That is why the strongest argument for the new model should not be dismissed. The previous system was complicated. Rules varied by sport. Athletes and families could misunderstand whether competition counted. Waivers required documents, judgment calls, and unpredictable decisions. The NCAA was also operating in a legal environment where almost every eligibility limit could become another lawsuit. The age-based model replaces many moving pieces with one clear period. Josh Whitman, the Illinois athletic director who chaired the Division I cabinet, said the change gives athletes a potential additional season while making roster decisions easier to predict. NCAA President Charlie Baker said the model removes rules that had become difficult to administer. The Division I Student Athlete Advocacy Committee supported a system that is simple to understand, transparent to administer, and applied fairly across sports and schools. For an athlete who enrolls immediately, remains healthy, and follows an ordinary academic path, the model can be more generous. That athlete can potentially compete in 5 seasons instead of 4. There is no need to save a red shirt. There is less risk that a handful of appearances will accidentally consume an entire season. The athlete knows the window and can plan around it. Simpler does not mean worse, but simpler also does not mean flexible. Those are different qualities. A rule can be easier to understand while creating harder outcomes for unusual circumstances. It can expand opportunity for one athlete while taking a recovery tool from another. Early legal challenges reveal that tension. Athletes whose eligibility ended under the previous system have argued that the transition unfairly excludes them from benefits available to later groups. Some have received temporary court relief while their cases continue. Those rulings do not rewrite the rule for everyone. They show that the boundary between the old system and the new one will remain contested. The biggest consequences will appear in roster behavior. Watch the size of high school recruiting classes. Watch whether programs sign fewer long-term projects. Watch the age and experience of transfer additions. Watch how many freshmen receive immediate roles. Watch how programs handle developmental positions, junior college recruiting, and injured players without traditional hardship relief. Watch whether coaches praise the freedom to use young players or complain that the continuous clock reduces their options. The first transition results will arrive as schools compare systems for current athletes. The next wave begins with students enrolling during the 2026 to 2027 academic year. The full model takes over for fall 2027 entrants. It also gives us a way to judge the rule instead of predicting every result immediately. If younger players receive more snaps and stay longer, the new model may expand opportunity. If high school classes shrink while older portal players dominate roster spots, the rule may accelerate a shift already underway. If litigation continues, the promise of simplicity may be challenged by more court-ordered exceptions. The honest conclusion is that the NCAA did not simply eliminate redshirts and hand everyone another season. It replaced a flexible but complicated system with a clear but continuous clock. For the athlete who arrives on time, the clock may create an extraordinary opportunity. For the athlete who needs patience, recovery, or a less direct path, it can become unforgiving. And for coaches, the question behind every roster decision changes. The question is no longer whether a season can be saved. The question is whether the player can become valuable before the time is gone. The red shirt was not only a rule, it was permission to wait. College football is entering a system where the clock is easier to read, but much harder to stop. That is the work behind FootballRealm and the larger GameplanByDylon ecosystem. The goal is to move past the loudest headline, organize the evidence, and explain what the change could actually do to the sport. The headline says the red shirt is disappearing. The real story is that development itself now has a deadline.